Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Walk in My Shoes, and I'm your host, Daniel Reyes. Oh, wait, hold on. No, it's me, Tatiana Bogdanova. Welcome. I'm very happy to have you all here, and it's a Walk in My Shoes program where we are bringing you an opportunity to step in the shoes of professionals from different fields, learn about their wins and challenges, opportunities and struggles, what keep them motivated, accountable, focused, and this program can give you some food of thoughts if it's something you may want to pursue in your career. So enjoy your time with us every Wednesday at 1 p.m. And I want to remind you that the program is brought to you by Achieve More and Prosper. And it's an AMP program that Columbus Literacy Council is serving for our youth. And we are very grateful to serve our youth through this challenging time. And we drive them toward their personal life goals and to exactly where they can achieve more and prosper. And AMP program can connect you with services and assistance to help you gain the skills, employment, or knowledge you need to go to prosper to the next level. So I'm very, very passionate about what we're going to be talking today. And I want to introduce and present you a very well-respectful person in its field, a professional bodybuilder, professional athlete coach, entrepreneurial person in its mindset. He's professional IFBB pro athlete, very reputable and famous coach, successful entrepreneur, very happy husband and father, successful social media content provider. Let me welcome our guest, John Meadows. Mr. Meadows actually allowed me to call him John. Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
So welcome, John, to our program. And how are you today? How are you feeling?
I'm good, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, we are very grateful that you are joining us. And I forget to mention that John is an Ohioan in his heart, right?
Yes, I've been in Ohio my whole life.
Yeah, and I think what's, for me at least, makes this person even more, even greater, because like being an Ohioan and such a professional in his field. So we are very proud to have you here.
Thank you.
So I mentioned in my introduction, I said that you are an IFBB pro athlete. So can you please elaborate a little bit more of what it means to be an IFBB pro athlete and what this abbreviation actually stands for? Because I think not everyone is familiar with this information.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So IFBB stands for International Federation, I believe, of Bodybuilders or of Bodybuilding, but it's essentially kind of like, think of it as the NFL in football. It's the kind of the cream of the crop, the best of the best organization. And in order to become an IFBB professional, you actually have to win certain shows that are designated as a professional qualifier. So in other words, You can't just wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I'm a pro as of now. You can't do that. You actually have to go to big national contests and you have to beat the other best people in the country in order to be allowed to, in order to qualify for that status. It's a very challenging status to attain. I I actually competed for the first time when I was 13 years old, believe it or not. And from a very, very young age, I wanted to achieve that. So, I'm 48 years old now. So I spent a lot of time working really hard. And when I actually won the contest that allowed me to be a professional, an official professional, was 2015.
Oh, wow.
So it was only 5 years ago when you think about it. And so think of, I started training in 1985, as a 13-year-old. And it wasn't until 2015 that I actually earned that status. So I tried, I believe I was in 16 contests that were pro qualifiers. I was in 60 or 70 contests overall, but 16 of those contests until I finally won one of the big ones. I had a
Wow.
lot of second places, fourth places, fifth places, but I finally in 2015 was able to do that. So it wasn't easy for me. It was a very difficult challenge, but it was something that did my heart. I really wanted to achieve. It was something I really wanted to work hard for, and I worked for it my entire life. And finally, it happened.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the road. Now, very, very few people go the route that I did. They either achieve it pretty soon or they just don't achieve it at all.
Yeah.
Not many people kind of hang around like I did and just try and try and try again.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm very happy with the road. It certainly makes me appreciate it because I had to really earn it and work for it. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I've been able to travel the world, and it's given me a lot of really fun opportunities. I've been able to take my family with me to all over the world. So it's been really, really fun. It's been great. And, so the last time I competed was in 2017. So when I qualified as a professional, I immediately, actually, and 2 weeks later, I started competing as a pro. I didn't wait at all. And I did 9 pro shows in 3 years, which is quite a bit. And now I have so much going on with business and other areas. I'm not really competing much now, but it's still a huge part of who I am. I love the journey that I took, and I tell people it's not always easy. You'll have a lot of setbacks, and I certainly had many, many setbacks, and many to myself. Am I really good enough to do this? I thought that many, many times, but I just kept trying. I kept working harder. I kept just trying to, how can I get 1% better today? Every single year was just continually just try to get a little bit better. So it taught me many, many lessons in life. You really got to earn things when you want to get them. Nobody hands you anything. Nobody handed me that professional status, and I had to earn it. So it's been not only fun, it's taught me some really great life lessons as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. What you've said, like every word, I want to elaborate more and ask questions because yeah, it's so many in over 20 years, right? You were competing for this pro card. So when you finally got it, what was your thought like? Do you remember it? When you finally were.
Oh, just do I remember it? It was one of the best days of my life. Imagine devoting yourself to something and spending so much time for so many years and then finally achieving.
Yeah. Oh.
And then they have a part in the evening that they call the finals. Now, most of the time, the finals is just a show for the audience so people can come and see who you are and see your routine and all that stuff. It's more for entertainment. Whereas early in the day, the prejudging, it's more for actual judging. Now, after the prejudging, you can usually tell roughly where you're going to place. Like, you may not know exactly, but you have kind of an idea of where you're going to place based on where they're moving you in the lineup. Because what they do is they bring people out in a line, and they start moving you around, comparing you to other people. And there is a way that they do it that kind of lets you know where you stand. And so after the prejudging, I felt like I was winning. And I mean, obviously, I was super, super excited. I was like, I think I'm actually winning. And I was really, really happy. And it was like, I think maybe another 4 hours until the finals. So I just kept hoping that 4 hours would go by really fast because I thought I had won and I wanted that moment to happen. And so when the finals started, they started announcing the places. So they said fifth place, fourth place, third place, and it got down to two of us. And I remember being very emotional and just trying to, like, okay, don't lose control of your emotions. Just don't lose control of your emotions, right? And when they said second place, the audience in New York went crazy. They were all cheering because so many of those people had followed me. And, they were real familiar with my journey. And, so all those people went crazy. And then they announced me in first place. And it was real emotional for me. And, I got backstage and there were people backstage that followed me and they were all crying. So it was this amazing, amazing event. And then, then I went with my wife to have dinner afterwards, and we were just kind of sitting there like all these years, and it finally happened. Because she had been with me since 1998, so she was there. We started dating the first year I did a pro qualifier, which was 1998. So she had been with me through the whole thing, and she had seen all the placings. So we had dinner, and it was just kind of like this feeling like, wow, it finally happened. It was amazing. And I remember before I went to bed that night, I was looking at the schedule for the pro shows. I was like, the next one coming up, I'm doing it. So 2 weeks later, I competed in my first pro show. 2 weeks after that, I did another pro show in Tampa, Florida, and I got third place. And then 2 weeks after that, I went to Texas, and I competed in a pro show, and I got fifth place. So then the season was over. So the first three shows I did as a pro, I was able to place in all of them, which just made it even better, because all those years I had to make myself better, allowed me to become a good pro. Because if I would have turned pro, say 10 years earlier, I might not have been competitive as a pro then. I needed the extra time to get better. So, but yeah, it was an incredible moment. It was an incredible night. I'll never forget it. It was amazing.
Yeah, so it's actually, I guess it's true when they say that everything valuable in your life you cannot build in a short period of time, right? So everything valuable is building through time, right? It takes so much time, and that means that it's something that you can value a lot. If you can build something for the very short time, it's not very, like, you hold it in your arm and it doesn't have the same power as something you've built through those years.
Yeah, I mean, when you put your heart into something, and no matter what it is, if it's your college degree, if it's a PhD, if it's studying to pass a test, if it's studying to pass a test to be a fireman, if it's getting your degree to be a teacher, it doesn't matter what it is. When you put your heart into something, and you have to really work to earn it, you can really appreciate it, So, that's my example was with bodybuilding, but it really translates way beyond bodybuilding, I think people, when they really have to put their nose to the grindstone and work hard, I think they can really appreciate when they actually achieve something.
When you started at age 13 and you step on the stage for the first time, right? Were you prepared for the journey like this, for going through this and earning your pro card on the later years? Or you were like, sometimes like people are so impatient, right? They may see those perfect bodies and they will think, oh, I'll go to the gym and I'll get to this stage in a matter of, okay, like 6 months, and I will be competing, and then I earn my pro card, and then I go further and further. Were you kind of prepared for the longer journey, or you also had like this idea that, okay, I'm gonna be pro soon?
Well, so when I was 13, I just loved bodybuilding. I knew I wanted to be a pro, but I also knew I was just a little kid. I mean, I was just a little kid, right? So I didn't understand at the time what it would take. I just was having fun. I really enjoyed it. I was having a good time, right? So I remember going to the contest, and it was just so fun for me. So even though I wanted to be a pro, enjoying the moment. Now, it's an interesting question you ask because when I turned 20, when I was about 20, 21, 22 years old, I was actually winning most of the shows in Ohio. So, here I am at 20, 21 years old, and I was winning, like beating all the guys who were 30, 40 years old. And I remember thinking this is going to be easier than I thought. Like, if I'm already at 20 years old winning these shows, then I think I'm going to be a pro pretty soon. Well, then what happened was I went to a big show, wasn't even a pro qualifier. I went to a show in New York, and I absolutely got my butt kicked. And I realized, well, then actually I went to a show in Florida right after that, and I did another big show, and I got my butt kicked again. And then I realized, wow, there's a whole nother level to this. Like, this isn't just Ohio. Like, there's levels to this. And I started to think a long way to go. I mean, I thought I was close, but I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was very humbling for me because I realized very quickly I still got a long ways to go. And, it wasn't until 1999 when I was 27 years old that I placed for the first time in a pro qualifier. I was competing in California at the Mr. USA, and I got fourth place. And it was the first time I had placed in a pro qualifier. And when that happened, I kind of once again thought, well, okay, I'm in the top 5 now. I'm 27. So I think this is going to happen pretty quickly. But it didn't. The competition is so tough. I would get fourth place, then eighth place, and then 13th place. And then I'd be back down to fourth place. It was so tough at that level. So, as soon as I would think to myself, okay, now I got it, it wouldn't happen. And I had to just keep working and working.
Yeah. So now it looks like you're talking about this like a lesson and you took it as a lesson, but was it really hard at that time, like being placed, like thinking that you are close, but being placed at 13th place? Have you ever thought that, okay, I cannot do it anymore, like I had to, because at that time you were working your corporate job as well, right? So
Yes.
while your like bodybuilding was your passion, but you were working a corporate job and you were quite successful in your corporate job, so you were growing in your corporate profession. So did you ever have this thought of thinking like, okay, bodybuilding, I will be exercising, but not competing or like fighting for this pro card?
Well, so what went through my head was I knew that I was working as hard as I could work. I knew that I was putting in the work. The question I had in my mind was more of, do I genetically have what it takes?
Okay.
It's kind of like if you look at like say NBA basketball. I've got a hoop in my front driveway. I can go out and play 10 hours a day, but I'm not going to be an NBA pro basketball player. It doesn't matter how hard I work. It's not going to happen. And so what I was thinking in my head was, okay, I'm putting in all the work, but do I just not have the genetics? Am I just not blessed enough genetically to make it happen? So that's the part that was frustrating because I was willing to train, as hard as I needed to train, to eat the way I needed to eat. I was willing to do all that. But what I was concerned about was maybe I just don't have the genetics. So that's the doubts that crept through my mind. And, fortunately, I didn't give up. But I did have those doubts along the way many, many times. Mm-hmm. Especially like when I dropped to 13th place. I had been 8th the year before, and I come back and I get 13th. And then you think, wow, there's 12 guys better than me. So now look how far away I am after I was so close, right? So it is tough because in that sport at the time, there was only one guy in your class that could win the pro card. So normally there would be anywhere from 35 to 45 people. So you had to be one person. You had to beat the other 35 or 45 people, which was very challenging. So yes, to answer your question, I had a lot of doubts. I never doubted my work ethic. I knew that I was willing to put in the hard work. I just doubted my genetics, and luckily I didn't give up. But yes, those definitely went through my head.
Okay, so the champions are those who are tough-minded, right? And they don't give up when they think that it's like it doesn't work anymore. So they are those who are keep like working through, and they finally become the champions. So when we are talking about those, like you said, you can train as hard as you can. What actually the day of bodybuilder looks like? Like let's say of a professional bodybuilder or the person who is working towards and becoming a professional bodybuilder. And another part of my question, I guess, is you mentioned your wife. So I've heard a lot that on a stage you see a bodybuilder, and you think that it's an individual sport, kind of, right? But in reality, I guess it's very team based sport, and the ones who are especially the ones who are close to you, they are let's say suffering and going through the same situation as you are going through, right? Because it's a hard sport, and it affects them as well as on the same level as it affects the professional bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, so let me take that question first. So it's definitely, for most people, not just individualistic. It's very team oriented for most people. And what I mean by that is, like, if you think about training in the gym, you can always push harder and train harder when you have a really good workout partner. Like, you can push yourself to a degree, but if you have a really, really good training partner, they can help push you further, because there's days when you're going to be tired, you don't feel like it, but that's when your training partner can push you. No, we got a show coming up. You got to keep pushing hard. So it starts right there in the gym, having a good training partner. And then if you think about it at home, so, you're going through this very rigorous diet that sometimes leaves you feeling fatigued and hungry. For me, it was more fatigued, just tired from the very rigorous pre-contest diet. So, I don't always feel like making meals and doing stuff like that. So if you have, you're in a situation where, like in my situation with my wife, she would always be willing to make me a meal or two. Now, I still made a lot of them myself, particularly earlier in my career. And then as we got later on, she tended to help me a little bit more. But it was her help was really, really important, because sometimes I'd be so tired, I just couldn't imagine even making a meal. I just wanted to lay down because I was so fatigued from the diet. And not only that, there's a mental part of it too. So mentally, when you're depriving yourself of food, it's hard mentally. Like, you don't think normally. Like right now, I feel really good. But if I was dieting really hard, I might not have the same thought process. So it's good to have people around you that can kind of encourage you, to tell you, you know what, I know this is tough, but you're going to work through it. So you also get that encouragement from people around you that can help as well. So for me personally, it's very team oriented. It was my wife, it was my training partners, it was my friends. All those people helped contribute to me being able to push harder. That's the first part of it. Now, the other question you asked was, what does a day of a bodybuilder look like? Now, that's going to vary quite a bit, because in my case, I made a living in the corporate world the early part of my career. I actually worked at JP Morgan Chase Bank for many years. I was there almost 10 years. So for me, bodybuilding was almost like a hobby, but it was a hobby that I was really passionate about. So I would have my breakfast, I would go to work, and if I had a meeting or at 9:30 or 10, what I would do is I always had like protein powder at work, and I would make a protein shake and drink it. Then I would have my lunch, I would eat lunch, and then like at 3 o'clock, I'd make another quick protein shake. And then I would leave work, and I would come home, and I would eat, and I would go to the gym. And then I would come home and eat again, and then, do a little reading and stuff. And then I would go to bed, and the next day I would do it all over again. So, for me, I had a normal, kind of a quote, normal job. And when I would compete in bodybuilding, I would just take a half a day off work on Friday, and I would go fly somewhere and compete. But then I would come home Sunday night, and I'd be back to work on Monday morning. And a lot of the people I worked with didn't even know I competed. So it was just,
Wow.
it was almost like a hobby. I certainly wasn't making any money at it. As an amateur, you don't make any money as an amateur. And even as a pro, the prize money is not very good. So the way you earn a living from it is you have to do different things. Like for me, I used to travel and do seminars. That was one thing. Um, Nowadays you have so many opportunities. Like for instance, I have a YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel does really good. Back then, they didn't really, bodybuilders weren't really doing YouTube. You can actually make a lot of money off of YouTube if you do well over the years. So, that was one way for me to make money. Another way is to coach people. So if you become very good at this craft and you can help other people, then it's a service, like being an attorney, being a lawyer, being a financial advisor. You can essentially provide a coaching service, which is what I've done for the last probably 20 years as well. So people come to you and they say, hey, I want to, get in better shape. It doesn't even have to be somebody that's competing. They might just say, hey, I want to get in better shape. Can you help me out? Well, if you offer that service, you can now provide income for yourself through coaching. So, there's coaching. I've done a lot of things on my website. I've built training programs that people purchase. There's different avenues that you can take. And a lot of those avenues weren't there back 20 years ago. So now this generation has some really good opportunities available to them. And I'm certainly taking advantage of them. I have my website and I sell programs, and I do coaching, and I have my YouTube, and I have all this stuff. And that's actually what allowed me to leave the corporate world, because all that stuff got set up for me. I was able to do it. So, I'm in a very fortunate position, but, if you don't do all those things, being a pro bodybuilder doesn't guarantee you a big income. It doesn't. So you have to work hard at those things in order to generate an income for yourself. I don't get paid a salary for being a pro bodybuilder. The International Federation of Bodybuilders, they don't send me a check. So I have to earn my own living. It's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like a sales job where it's just commission, right? You've got to earn your money yourself. And what's funny is most guys that I know that are professionals, even when you go to a show and compete and you place and you earn a little money, most of us aren't even really in it for the money anyway. We just love the sport. I remember the first pro show where I won money. I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, I forgot they even had money. I competed as an amateur for so long, where I got was a plastic trophy. Then all of a sudden they're handing me a check, and I was like, oh, I forgot. I can actually, it wasn't much, but most of the guys, we don't even really do it for the money. It's because we really, really love the sport.
You have to really love this sport to be able to survive, train at 5 a.m., right, to train to 6 a.m., having all those meals scheduled. When you had this corporate job and your bodybuilding career going on in parallel, right, were you any day you were feeling something like bodybuilding throwing you off from your corporate success, or corporate success is throwing you off from your bodybuilding success? Because how were you managing those two kind of lines together?
Well, it was very challenging. It was very hard, because my position at the bank was pretty tough. I was a project manager, and I had a lot of responsibility. And it was tough, because what would happen is I'd work all day, then I'd come home and train, and then I had clients I was coaching. So I would be up all hours of the night. And a lot of times I was working all weekend on Saturdays and Sundays, because I was coaching people too, trying to build that part of my business. So I essentially never had any days off. I was always working. And, there was a period of time where I said, I could be a better project manager at work, but the bodybuilding is kind of getting in the way. And I could also be a better coach and have a better career, but the bank's getting in the way. So I knew if I just picked one or the other and really focused, I would do better. And I figured I could always come back to the bank if it didn't work out, but I may not be able to come back to bodybuilding if people forgot who I was, if I just my name just became another name. So I figured it was worth the risk. So based on that and several other factors, but I went ahead and I chose to try to get into kind of this fitness world, we call it, professionally, and it worked out. But to your question, it was really tough because I was trying to do two at once for so many years, trying to do both. Very, very challenging.
So there finally will come a point where you have to decide and choose one of the other, and you have to be kind of ready, like right for your decision. Uh, like I was also wanted to ask about the for our youth, for example, if they want to pursue this career. I guess there are two options. You can start as a professional competitor, and then professional competitor, and finally got to the coaching position, right? And another way of approaches is to get a degree and like get a certificate of a personal trainer, right? Would you say that pursuing it from the being a competitor first is a better way rather than doing a degree first, like, if it makes sense?
Well, so I had a coach when I was 20, 21, 22 years old, and he always told me treat bodybuilding as a hobby, but make sure you get a really good education, get your degree first as your foundation. So I was lucky because he really pushed me to work on my education. So I got a degree in health and fitness management, and then I went and got a couple certifications that are really, really good certifications. So I think it's good to have both. I think really working hard. For example, I took physiology of exercise, exercise science, anatomy, physiology, kinesiology. I did all that stuff. And it was really good. It was really good to give me a real good understanding of the human body and how it works. And I think it's good to have the education to go with the practical part, which is how you actually apply it. And I think when you have an education, but you've never really applied it, it's kind of hard. And I think if you're decent at applying it, but you have no education, there's a little bit of a limit too. So I always encourage people, try to get both. Try to really work on your education and learn everything you can, but also try to get real experience. So for me, what I did was I was working really hard on my education, but I was training people for free. I would say, you know what, I need experience. I think I have the book smarts, but I need experience. So will you, in essence, for free, just let me coach you? So that gave me practice. And, as I got better and I helped people achieve their goals, now I could say, okay, I've done this for 3 years for free or 2 years or whatever. Now I think I want to charge a little bit of money, and I can show people, hey, here's 10 people that I work with and here's the progress they made. So now you got like a portfolio, right? So I would encourage people to make sure they continue to focus on their education, but try to find ways, to get that experience, even if you have to do, it's kind of like an internship, right? I mean, that's what you do as an intern with jobs, is you do it for either low pay or no pay, one or the other. And that allows you to get that experience so you can start building your business.
Yeah. So you kind of work on your reputation, and then your reputation can work for you, right? Later.
That's right. You have to build your I call it your base.
Yeah.
And that means knowing how to work with people, knowing what to do. It means having all those fundamentals. Then you can just work with people a little bit more at a time, a little bit more at a time. You don't have to rush it, and just get better at it and better. And then the longer you do it, the better you'll get at it. Then it'll be 5 years and 10 years. And next thing you know, you're really good at it, right? It just like anything else, it just takes time and focus.
Have you ever thought that people, if it's something for free, people are not taking it as serious as what they pay for?
For sure, 100%. And, I'm thinking back, just thinking through the people that I helped. And what's funny was what I did a lot of times was I used the barter system. So, I knew people that worked at like a restaurant. So I would say, okay, I'll train you 2 days a week, but I want you to make me 4 meals. Like I want to come in and pick up 4 meals. And like I had some clients that worked at a clothing store. And I would say, okay, I want to be able to pick out 4 pieces of clothes a month. So I had this cool bartering system where people were in different positions, and so I wasn't really charging them money, but I was, it was, they would get like employee discounts and, very and things like that. So it wasn't much for him, but it was just a little something,
Yeah.
So I felt appreciated.
I like this idea a
Um,
lot because for them it also feels like they are kind of it's not free, right? So they are investing something in your service. So yeah, I like this idea a lot. Yeah, it's can very good, great advice. Thank you for sharing.
yeah, well, I mean, you're right, because a lot of times when people get free stuff, what they do is they end up just doing what they want to do anyway,
Yeah,
because they're not really paying for it. But if they pay for it, or if they have what we call skin in the game, then they're like, well, I'm paying for this, so I'm going to at least try what they have to say.
yeah,
So that's kind of a good compromise in the middle as you're building up.
yeah. Okay. So, John, we're gonna be playing some video from your YouTube channel right now. You're familiar with this video, so we're gonna be introducing this video to our audience, and then I ask you a question related to this video.
Okay.
Can you see the video?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So here we are having very famous professional bodybuilder, and he is four-time Mr. Olympia, right? And
Yes.
four-time he won four-time Arnold Classic, right? And
Yes.
he has a lot of other different titles. So this is a Mr. J. Cutler, and he's not with us, but we'll welcome him in our program as well. So he's a four-time Mr. Olympia, and a Mr. Olympia is the highest level you can achieve in a IFB on the IFBB Pro stage, right?
Yes.
So those are special people. Uh, what do you think it takes you to become a Mr. Olympia? What kind of person is this? So, and you trained with the four-time Mr. Olympia. Uh,
Yeah, I actually this year trained with the current Mr. Olympia too, Brandon
oh, Curry.
Curry.
Oh,
So um, Mr. Olympia is the best of the best. So you have to have everything. You have to have God-given genetics. You have to have work ethic. You have to live it. Like everything has to be perfect at that level to be the absolute best in the world. So Jay is a really amazing guy. Like he's the kind of guy, like I remember when he was prepping for the Olympia, he would get up at like 4 in the morning and he would do an hour of cardio. He would eat and go back to bed. Then he'd get up early and he would go work out. Then he would do like another half hour cardio. Then he'd come back later in the afternoon. He'd work out again. He was eating like 7, 8 times a day. Like his whole life was revolved around being the best in the world. And to get at that level, that's what it takes. I mean, you have to, every moment of your day you have to be doing the right things. It doesn't mean you don't have room for other things. It doesn't mean you don't have room for family and things like that. It just means that you have to be really disciplined. You have to do all your training, all your eating. And again, you have to have the genetics. There's only a few people in the world that have genetics that are good enough to be the best of the best, right? So you have to have all those things. And Jay was a good example of someone who had all those things and he took advantage of it and he won, multiple times, as you said.
and so we have several people who were winning multiple times, right? Does it mean that, and some of them were winning like year after year, like the following years, right? So does it
Hmm.
mean that there are no other genetically gifted or other people who's working too hard, or there is always like a very tough competition and several people are competing, but why there are so many, not many, but several people
Yeah.
who were winning like several titles of Mr. Olympia or Mr. Olympia.
We, no, you're right. There's these eras,
Yeah.
right? So like Arnold Schwarzenegger had his era. And then Lee Haney, who's one of my favorites, Lee Haney had his era and he just dominated. Like there was
Yeah.
just no one that could stand next to him. He was just genetically so good, and plus he was a hard worker. Then you had Dorian Yates come in, and I don't know how many years he won, but he won many, many years. Now some of his were a little controversial, but many of his were dominating, like no one was really close to him. And then Ronnie Coleman came in, and he had many years where he just dominated. So you get these guys that are really their genetics are on another level, and they just dominate. And Jay, really the ones Jay won. There was one that was a little controversial, but he was pretty dominating too. I remember being at a couple of his Arnold Classic victories. In fact, I might have been at all of them because it's right here in Columbus.
Yeah.
And he won pretty easy. Like, I mean, there was really no doubt. Like after the prejudging, it was like, okay, well, Jay's going to win another one. So, you have these very unique, special people that are just so much better than everybody else, but there's only so many of them, right?
Yeah.
Phil Heath won a bunch of Mr. Olympias, after Jay did, and Phil was dominating. So when you find someone that's that good, they're usually just heads and shoulders above everybody else, usually.
Okay. And for those who are interested in Mr. Olympia and the competition, not like maybe stepping on stage, and it's not very easy to step on stage on the Mr. Olympia stage, right? But this year competition was transferred to December, right? And
Yes.
they're going to be in December, while normally they are in September. But because of this
Yes.
situation, because of COVID, and so December is going to be in like what, couple of months. So you can, I guess you can. Mr. Olympia is in Las Vegas, right? You can
Yes.
fly if you can, but if you can watch it online, I guess. So you were competing, and while you were competing, you started your coaching business, right?
Mhm.
So how is it, even though you were competing yourself and you were coaching people kind of for the same thing, how is it different to be a coach? Because I guess no one who is like practicing bodybuilding or stepping on stage can be a coach themselves, right? So you have to have certain skills, and you have to have certain qualities to be a coach. And what qualities how do you think the good coach should look like? I mean, not from the appearance point of view, but as a person, as a profession.
I think so. I think the best coaches are many times the ones who didn't have the easy road, and they had to figure things out. Like they had to figure out how to solve problems, and you have to be creative. You have to be able to, because not every person's the same. Just because I did things a certain way for me doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody. So I need to be creative. I need to see how they react to certain foods, certain amounts of food, certain types of training. And I have to make adjustments based on that. So just because someone has competed and won a contest, it helps, but it doesn't make you a great coach, right? It doesn't make you a great coach. So I think a lot of times what I see is the guys who had to work really hard competing, they may not even became a professional. They just didn't have the genetics, but they had the smarts, they had the work ethic, but they just didn't have the genetics. A lot of times those guys are the best coaches because they're the ones who were constantly trying to figure out, what do I need to do to fix this problem? What do I need to do to fix this problem? Whereas some guys who are very genetically blessed, who kind of rise to the top pretty easy, well, they don't really have to figure anything out. It kind of happens naturally for them. So they're kind of like, well, this must be the way everybody should do it. Well, no, you're a little different, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the people who can also communicate well with others. And the advantage that having competed before brings is what they're going through. So, for instance, when you get down to like 2 weeks out from a contest, you don't feel real good. You feel really tired. And you can relate. If someone messages you and they're sending you their update and they sound tired, then you can relate. You can say, hey, I know this is hard. I've been there. We're going to get through it. Whereas somebody who's never coached, they might say, well, what's wrong? Why are you so tired? They don't understand that's a part of the process. So experience definitely helps, but it doesn't guarantee that you know what you're doing. I think you need I think you need some experience. You don't need to be a professional, but I think you need to be good at solving problems. That's really the key, is when someone gets stuck, what do you do to help fix that and for them to continue to get better?
So when you started coaching, I guess most of your experience was offline, right? You were coaching in the gym. While right now, most of the things are happening online, and most of the coaching with other coaches happening online. So it's kind of a very usual current situation, right? So,
Yes.
and it started before the COVID, right? Before everything went online with the COVID-19. So how do you think the coaching business will, like fitness coaching, will go further with this situation as well? So do you see
Well,
any major changes happening?
I mean, the thing is coaching was already going that way because of social media. So, with Instagram and different social media applications, it allows you to get out there and reach a lot of people, YouTube, what have you. So people can just say, I'm a coach,
Yeah.
right? There's no, like, you can't just say, I'm an IFBB professional. You have to earn that. You can't just say it. But when it comes to being a coach, you can just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm a coach. And you can get on Instagram and you can say, hey, everybody, I'm a coach. So there's really no barrier to entry. Anybody can say anything. So a lot of people are kind of gravitating toward online coaching because it's easy to do. Now, being good at it, ball game. Like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you're good at it. It's a lot of work. And when you get to see people in person, it's a little bit easier to make decisions and coach, in my opinion. Just about everything I do is online, but you're right. Back in the old days, I used to do it in person with people locally around here. You get to see them all the time. You get to, you actually talk to them. You can just see more, right? Instead of just getting an email and some pictures. So I think it's going to continue with social media to go more online, but I always think in gyms, face-to-face stuff is always the best. I still think that's a great thing to do. It's just more people are headed the other way. I don't see like coaching in the gym going away because a lot of people don't want to interact by email. They want someone to be with them and tell them what to do and explain what to do. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's a very good thing. So I don't think, you're going to see like personal training, people stop doing that. I don't see that at all. I just see the online part just growing bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay. Do you continue train any people offline rather than online?
Well, what I do is a lot of times my clients will fly into Ohio to train with me. So I might have a guy from California fly in to train with me, or, so various times throughout the year. Of course, this year has been different with COVID, but when COVID is not a thing, I have people flying in usually about every month, and they'll usually stay with me for a day or two and train, and that gives me time to catch up and see them and talk to them. So I do still do some of that for my clients that are flying in from out of town.
Okay. And do you work with the girl who is competing in an Olympia this year, right?
Yes.
She's competing in fitness.
Fitness, that's right. She won the Arnold Classic
won
this year.
Yeah, I actually saw her performing this year on Arnold Classic. Yeah,
she's really good.
She's really great. So, like moving to online thing and social media, what social media, because you have a very huge presence and your population is huge on social media, what social media platforms for you right now? Like, what do you consider them to be in your life?
Well, I do a lot of YouTube, and YouTube is great because it allows you to reach so many people. It's great because I can share my ideas with so many people. I can put a video up and talk about something, and 100,000 people, 500,000 people, that video with Jay Cutler you put up has over 1 million views. So it allows you to reach a lot of people and to teach a lot of people. So YouTube for me is a great tool. I love it. Instagram is a decent tool too. I like it. You can still teach on it. You can still do fun things. Instagram more for me is more like pictures of family stuff and things like that. But but you can certainly teach on it. So to me, YouTube and Instagram are still really good. YouTube would be my favorite just because of the sheer teaching you can do on it. And then Facebook, that's kind of like, that's where people go to argue. Like people just argue on Facebook. So I'm a little bit limited with my Facebook because I don't like to hang around negativity. I don't like to be around all that negativity.
Opinion on an opinion, right? Everyone wants
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So actually, it's interesting. You like the way you separated Instagram from YouTube. I found out that people who are providing like educational content, they found YouTube uh, being a better social media platform rather than Instagram. So the one who is doing like visual content and just pictures and like present themselves through visual content, they like Instagram more. But if your goal is to educate, you will do more YouTube, right? So it's where
That's
you
right.
yeah it's yeah
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned this as well. So we'll move to our section where we have a question from our audience, and I'm gonna be looking for questions. And the first question is, what are some of the genetic specifications to allow someone to succeed? I guess succeed in becoming a professional bodybuilder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So generally you got people with kind of like a smaller waist, wide shoulders. So they got this V shape to their body. That looks very impressive on stage. Some people who carry low amounts of body fat naturally, like they're able to be lean easier. And then the other thing is just the ability to put on muscle. Like you can take two people and have them give them both the exact same exercise routine, and one of them will gain a lot of muscle and the other one won't. That's just genetics in many cases. So you want people to have this structure, their physical body, wide shoulders, narrow waist, and then you want them, they need to be able to get in really good shape, have really low body fat, and then they need to be able to put on muscle easy. Those are kind of the basics right there.
Did you ever have like this situation where you had to tell a person who really want to be a bodybuilder, but you had to tell this person that sorry, you're genetically not going to be competing and winning
Oh,
shows?
that's such a tough situation because I don't like to shoot down anybody's dreams. I don't like to do that.
Yeah.
So what I would typically do, I've had a lot of people come to me and, hey, I've been training for 6 months. I want you to help me. I want to be a pro next year. And I'll say, whoa, 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 hold on. You haven't even competed yet. And you're telling me you want to be a pro. Like you're talking to a guy that took, decades. So I very often have to tell people, you need to start at square one. We need to, first of all, just get you into a contest. And then sometimes they'll figure out for themselves, like, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe this is harder than I thought it was. And you don't even need to tell them, they can kind of see it. I will say this, though. I have had to tell people, they would say, I'm going to compete. I'm going to compete. And then they would diet. And I did tell them, you might want to rethink this because your competition is going to look very different than what you look. I know it doesn't feel good to hear it. It probably hurts your feelings. But they would come back later and they'd say, man, I appreciate you telling me. It's not a pleasant conversation to have, but I would rather be honest with people. I'd rather do that than say, yeah, go for it. You're going to win. Then they get their butt kicked and they come back and they go, what happened? You said I was good.
Yeah.
Right? I would always rather take the honest approach, even if it's sometimes not the most fun, right?
Yeah. I guess they can on this like market of coaches, they would find person who would say yes to their winning a pro card in 6 months, yeah, right? But it doesn't mean they would win this pro card. Let's go to another question. Oh, how many meals do you eat a day? And what do you eat? And this question is coming from our Daniel Reyes. Our we have another program on your left. It's kind of workout program, and it's facilitated by Daniel Reyes. So he's asking this question.
Well, so these days I only have 3 or 4 meals a day. They're very balanced. It might be, in the mornings it might be oatmeal with blueberries, some protein powder. My lunch might be some chicken, maybe some beans and rice. My dinner might be some fish and some sourdough toast. But for my bodybuilding career, I ate 6 meals a day for over 20 years straight, never missed a meal. Um, Probably 25 years straight, I ate 6 times a day and never missed one single meal.
Have you ever been like, oh, I'm tired of like,
Oh yeah, I always said the hardest part about bodybuilding for me was eating all the food I needed to eat. Like I enjoyed going to the gym and training. I had fun doing that. But when you don't want to eat and you just have to keep eating and eating and eating, it's tough. And then the opposite happens when you diet. Like you want to eat and then you can't. You can't
yeah,
eat as much. You still have 6 meals, but they're not as filling. So you get hungry. Now things have changed. Now we know that you can still do 3 or 4 meals and still do just as well as long as your calories in the right place. But in the era that I grew up, that wasn't the
yeah,
case.
yeah,
Knowledge is a little better. But the way I grew up, it was 6 meals.
yeah.
Like whether you're gaining weight, losing weight, 6 meals, and then balance out the size of the meal based on your goal.
So you
So
can you say that now it's kind of easier for pro
yes,
bodybuilders to, okay,
I think it is because now
more
instead of eating
flexible,
six
right?
times,
Yeah.
it's more flexible. Now you could just eat bigger meals and you don't have to eat all the time. So I think it's definitely easier now.
Okay. What do I need to do to get stronger but not bigger? I guess
Well,
not me. Question not from me. Question is not from me. I cannot identify the person who is asking, but the question is, yeah, how to get stronger but not bigger.
well, I mean, just the act of training with weights will help you get stronger because what happens is your brain talks to your muscles.
Oh.
And the more you do it, the better that we call that the mind muscle connection. The more you do it, the better you get and the stronger you get. The gaining weight part, yes, it does come from lifting weights, but a lot of that too is from eating enough calories. So typically what you find with people, if they're trying to gain weight, they have to really bump their calories up. But you can keep your calories the same and not bump them up and still get stronger. So that's the approach that you should have. Like you don't need to eat tons and tons and tons of food. And if you don't, you won't gain a lot of weight, but the weight training itself should still make you stronger.
So in order to get stronger, do you need to up your weight, up the resistance that you are working with? So the more you lift, the like stronger you get.
Well, that's the goal. The goal is to try to beat what you're doing a little bit each time, even if it's only 1 pound. So if you do a certain weight for 10 repetitions 1 week, the goal the next time would maybe be to do it 11 times. So, that's called progressive overload. That's the word we use. And it just means slight increases, little bits of increases over a period of time.
Okay, another question actually for me, or from me, related to the training. There is a thing like going to failure, right? So should your each workout have to be like going to failure or not?
Yeah, so I know what you mean. So when you do an exercise, should you do reps until you can't do any
Yeah.
more reps? The answer is it depends on what your experience level is. So, like as a beginner or intermediate, you absolutely don't have to go to failure. You just need a lot of good reps, but you don't have to go until you can't do anymore. Now, that changes as you get more advanced. As you get more advanced, if you want to get better. Now, if your goal isn't to get better, then you don't have to go to failure. But as an advanced person, like for me, like if I wanted to get better, I would have to go to failure, not on all sets, but on some of them,
Okay.
just to push my body because you have to tell your body you got to do more. That's how your body adapts and you get better. But again, as a beginner and as an intermediate, just the act of training is going to make you better. You don't really need to push yourself that hard. So the answer is no, and then the more advanced you get, it goes up to
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, as a youth who is we'll actually take last question. As a youth who is interested in being a bodybuilder is there any local places in Columbus that you would recommend to be around the right crowd and atmosphere to get a foot into the door?
Yeah, so there are a lot of good gyms in Columbus. We are so blessed in Columbus. Like I live in Pickerington, and there's a Power Shack, there's a Lifetime, there's a Planet Fitness, and there's an American Barbell, and there's another new one. All those gyms are within 10 minutes from me. And that's just Pickerington. There's good gyms all over Columbus. Power Shack gyms are good. I train at a gym called American Barbell in Pickerington, which I highly recommend. It's really, really good.
I'm gonna write it
I
down.
even like the Lifetimes. Yeah, so American Barbell in Pickerington is my favorite.
Okay,
That's where I
thank
train.
you.
That's my favorite gym in Columbus. And then, like the Power Shacks in Westerville and Grove City, those are good. Lifetime here in Pickerington, Lifetime at Easton, those are good gyms. There's a lot of good gyms around here.
Okay. What do you recommend? I know that there are a few certificates that you can get, right, for personal training. What would be your top kind of choices? Because
Yep.
I go to the gym and they offer their course, like 2-day course. Is it something worth pursuing, or what should be the choice in
Um,
terms of certificate?
those courses aren't going to be very good. What you want is there's there's a certification called a CSCS. It's a certified strength and conditioning specialist. That's my favorite and best certification. It's put out by a company called NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most reputable group. The test is not easy. You have to study really hard for it. I studied really hard for 60 days straight when I took it. But it's called the CSCS. They also have one called the CPT, which is a certified personal trainer, which is also a good place to start. But I would recommend people go to the NSCA, National
Okay.
Strength and Conditioning Association, and they'll find that stuff there.
Okay. So this was the last question. John, thank you very much. Thank you. I really appreciate our conversation. There are so many questions I would like you to ask, but we only have an hour, and we want you to continue with your day. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. Very, very provoking conversation. Thank you for, like, it makes me think a lot, and I will continue thinking. So thank you very much. Thank you, our viewers who were watching us online and will be watching later on YouTube, on Facebook. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time in a week time. We have more guests, we have more information for you, and we always here to provide you services, to provide you knowledge, information, opportunities. And please join us, and please reach us at Columbus Literacy Council on Facebook and Instagram, and on our sites in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you very much, and bye bye all. See you.